Hello and welcome to Hop Along Studio. So in today's video, I want to share with you how you can use rubbings and inks to improve your drawing practice. So let's get started. So as many of us aren't super comfortable with drawing, I thought today I would combine a technique that is using rubbings, using leaves, as well as your own drawing to just bring our journal page together. It can feel challenging to learn how to draw, especially when you feel like you may not know how to draw in perspective, and it can be challenging. So the rubbings are here to kind of help you get a sense of shape and then just add your own marks and your own drawing to it. And with this month being Inktober, I thought by being able to add in a bit of your own drawing with some other mediums like these wax pastels, it would be a fun way of just trying to practice a little bit of inking for October and drawing, and maybe start building that creative habit or a little bit more confidence in drawing. So the first thing you want to do is select some leaves. I have a combination of leaves that I just picked up yesterday. I was at the zoo going for a walk and they have some beautiful maples there, and maples only grow in some areas of Calgary, and they're actually not generally known very well for this zone. So I love maples, but I don't actually get to use them a lot in my work. But these were on the ground at the zoo, so I picked them up just to add them to my artwork. And this one has actually been pressed. I found this one a few weeks ago. One thing I realized is because I've pressed it now, it's a little bit flatter. It's not going to give the same good veins as a fresh leaf. So I would suggest using a fresh leaf where you can. I'll show you how to use both, and we'll kind of see what the results we get are just as we go along. And for this project, I'm using these water resistance wax pastels. These are the Caran Neocolor ones. If you don't have these, I think you could probably use some sort of like wax crayon. I know you could probably just use even pencils or something else. Anything to kind of add rubbing and add color. Charcoal also works for this. And this is a 260 GSM smooth Bristol paper. It's a little bit thicker, so I'm going to have to work a little bit harder to get my image through. The thinner your paper, the better this will work. But because this comes from my journal, I wanted to be able to pop it back in. And I know I've shown this journal a few times before, but it is this Koh-I-Noor journal that actually has the removable blank pages that can be added back in. But you can as easily do this in your journal if you have a journal that you can't remove the pages from. This really is a personal preference. So to start with, you want to figure out kind of where you want your layout to be. In this case, I think I want to lay it probably something like that, kind of across the bottom. And I've made a point to make sure that the veins are up so that when I'm rubbing against it, I'm rubbing against the most textured part of the leaf. So we're going to start by using the Neocolor crayons just to add rubbing. And you don't want to go like this. You want to use the side of your crayon or whatever you're using for this. And as you can see, as I'm rubbing, I'm trying to generally keep it in one direction. It makes for kind of a nicer final result. Just keep rubbing until you get all of the image that you're looking for down on the page. So that's a pretty good image. But let's say you want to add a little bit of other color. You could always just go in with your orange, and I would do this still with the leaf below. It's going to make this easier because the last thing you want to lose is some of those etchings. I think that adds just a little bit of fun, just to add a little bit of variation there. So yeah, by having those thicker veins in there, that does give a better image. And because again, I'm using a much thicker paper, it really matters to make sure that you're getting the right image in there. I'm going to put it this way. I'm going to let them overlap just a little bit. And you can decide which one you want to have below and which one you want on top. And for the sake of positioning, sometimes I like holding up to the light, just to help make sure I'm in the right place. And then I'm just going to use my orange crayon, or pastel. I call a lot of things crayons that aren't crayons, but I think we kind of get the point. You can see the darker colors actually work a little bit better for this. This is where you can also come in. You add a little small guy along the edge here. I don't know if this is going to work. That doesn't seem to have a lot of texture to it. Oh, it is still working. It's not going to be quite as nice. It's maybe not going to have quite the same level of texture, but that's okay. It still gives you a bit of an image. This is again where you can come in. And add a bit of color. So this is a very nice page as it is. If you where you could go from this is you could add some journaling on top, you could add other images, or you could really just leave this as is and kind of run with it. I think it's just beautiful just as it is. But since I wanted to turn this into a little bit of drawing practice and where you can take it from here, the next thing we're going to try is taking a marker of some sort. In this case, I'm using a permanent Tombow marker. You want to use some sort of permanent ink on this. It seems to work the best. And what you want to do is start outlining it and kind of bringing some focus onto the edges. And this is where rubbing's kind of good because it gives you the general shape, but doesn't give you every detail. So this is where you can add in details, you can decide to leave out details. It really is up to you. And what I'm doing is actually having my other leaf here so I can kind of compare and reference just as I work. And so I'm going to start just by finding that middle stem. And again, you can do this very sketchy. My nature is to go a bit sketchier with this than perfectly tight lined, because I like the little bit looser feel. And again, it's your personal preference on how you would like to see this to look a certain way. So I'm just kind of paying attention to the leaf and realizing, okay, it goes about here, and then you get these little ridges in here. And then we kind of come up here. There's another little ridge. Because again, these leaves have all these tiny little marks in them. They're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. And that's what makes them so beautiful and so unique. And this is where I like using drawing in this way, or even using like the grid system for drawing. I've done another video on the grid system, which I will leave in the comments below, as well as show it in the card above. And the reason I enjoy it so much is the grid system helps you with observation, because I find the hardest thing about drawing well is good observation. You think you're drawing what you're seeing, but then you realize you're not really doing a great job with it. And that can sometimes be the most frustrating thing, is your drawing doesn't look what you expect it to look like. And so by having things like grid drawing or by using rubbings, you can generally get the shape, and then from there just add in the things that kind of make the drawing look the way you hope it will look. And you can see in some of these areas I've kind of lost some of my definition. So this is where you can just decide, oh, I'm just gonna make my leaf go this way. And again, follow it as well as you can, but it's not about perfect, because leaves are generally not perfect anyways. But if drawing's very intimidating for you, this might be not a bad way to start. This is where you can use all those little details. You can add more of them, you can add less of them. It kind of depends on the look you're looking for. And I think so many of us spend so much time going, oh, I can't draw, and I'll never be able to draw. And one thing that I have realized is how much these limiting beliefs affect what I can and cannot do. And it was learning how to paint where all of a sudden I realized that, oh, well, use grid drawing, learn how to use this, learn how to use this technique. Like, all the things will get you there in the end. You just need to give yourself permission to even try. And I think that's the most powerful thing about learning how to draw, or even just attempting to learn how to draw. My husband's actually a CAD designer, and he spent a lot of time learning how to draw and do architectural type drawings, and he's the one who actually critiques most of my drawings. I go, something's wrong, and he says, oh, well, it's because this perspective's wrong, or your eye's in the wrong place. And I'm like, how do you see that? And he just knows because he's spent so many years drawing. And my understanding of a lot of this stuff has been, it's all about practice. If you don't practice, you won't get better. And honestly, I haven't gotten that great at drawing because I don't practice enough. And that's what I love about Inktober. Inktober's pull out your pens, pull out your ink, start drawing. Start a drawing habit. And that's what I just absolutely love about participating in it, even though I don't draw very well, is there's some pretty amazing artists out there who have beautiful, beautiful work. And I don't compare myself to them because they are at a different place. They have spent the hundreds of hours to get really good at drawing, and I haven't. But that doesn't mean I can't be inspired or learn something and figure out, well, how can I do that? How can I become better at that? How can I learn how to draw and have it become a little bit more naturally than it does right now? I don't draw super well, but at the same time, I'm learning how to draw. And it is a process and practice. And actually, as I'm doing this, I'm realizing moving up to get those little ridges is a lot easier than going the other way. So something to think about. It's easier to kind of get the right strokes coming down. But yeah, I think it's very important that we try, that we don't give up or just say we'll never learn how to draw. I think it comes down to, do you have the interest to draw? And that's why it's nice to have the reference of the leaf that you chose, because then again, if a few of those lines don't show up well, you can kind of figure out, oh, that's generally where it should be. Because I found there's lots of areas that were all kind of the same color. So it was really hard to tell where some of the stuff began and ended. So now that you have your shapes down, now you can kind of go in and add more lines if you feel like it. You can see how all these permanent markers are really good, or permanent pens are really good, just because they do help get it on top of the wax, and they are permanent, and you don't have to worry about them being damaged by the wax. So something to think about. You don't want something that is going to be water-based on this. You want something that's going to be permanent. And then by just adding extra dark places and places, you can just end up adding a few more highlights to things. And even if you found that you wanted things a bit darker than they look, you can just add extra lines in. Add a little bit more sketchiness to it. I personally like the sketchiness to a lot of my drawings. For me, it's a little bit of a looser style. It means I don't have to be nearly as perfect in kind of what I do as well. Which is kind of important to me, just to learn to loosen up a bit. And this is where you could really get rid of most of that textured lines, or you can just leave some of them in. It kind of depends on how strong a look you want. I'm pretty happy with that. With the lighter colors and with the heavier paper, this is a little bit harder technique to get kind of the way you want. This is where it might go a little bit better if you ended up using some thinner paper, even doing them one at a time, because if you could do one leaf and then just do the inking around it, then you have this completed, and then you can kind of add the other ones in. And I'm just going to kind of leave it, I think, like this. You could really go in if you felt like you want a little bit more separation from the background. I do have this, I think it's a purple crayon, and you could really just add a little bit of crayon just to the background here. As you can see, that can kind of help the leaves pop a bit more, being a little more separated from the background. Kind of a personal preference. Just going to add it in a few places. You could really go with blues, you could go with greens, you could really go quite crazy with this. It kind of depends on the look you want. Again, I don't really want to take away with what I'm already doing, but this purple does kind of work. Just try to add a few little highlights, and yeah, that's just made that pop just a tiny bit more from the background. So sometimes just by adding just one more color, one more little touch, it can just help it just be that tiny bit stronger. And because of purple with the yellow, you'll end up getting more of that kind of browny tone. But that's not too bad either. I really like the pigment on these particular crayons, and these wax pastels actually. They actually are highly pigmented, which is really nice when you're using them on things like this. There's lots of other products out there, but this is one that I've purchased recently and kind of wanted to play with and kind of show you what some of the results you could get from it is. I really like where this is going, but I want to look at adding a little bit of lettering to this. I struggle with lettering, so I thought I would try to add it as part of my interest in trying to improve my lettering skills. So in this case, I'm just going to be putting in some letters and thickening them up as I go. I think I'll use a slightly different pen. Since it's an elegant writer, it's also quite thick. So I've just written the word fall, and then I'm going to throw in memories below. And this is all freehand, so I'm hoping I'm going to keep it fairly even. And hopefully fairly straight. It's not terrible. So now what we want to do is start going in and just thickening up these lines. And I know there are people who are very good at brush calligraphy that I'm sure are maybe cringing a little bit right now. This is definitely not my strength, but I appreciate the idea of beautiful lettering. So I'm trying to figure out ways that I can try to incorporate it in and start trying to get a little bit better at it. So I know this is not the proper and pure way of doing calligraphy, and there are lots of people out there who have amazing videos and amazing tutorials about how to do this the proper way. And I would say go visit them if you're looking for like perfect calligraphy tutorials. I'm just trying to work on getting a little bit better at lettering. I try to have nice looking lettering on some of my projects because I tend to try to stick with stickers and stamps and other things because I'm not totally happy with my lettering skills. So even doing things like this where it's not perfect, it's not totally accurate to the way you're supposed to be doing lettering, but the idea is just to try to get me adding my own lettering of some sort onto my projects. And we all have the things that we feel like we excel in and things that we don't. And I think it's just not beating ourselves up, but just giving ourselves the space and time just to try to learn. And as I'm doing this, I'm trying to think like skinny. So usually when you're using a proper brush pen for this type of stuff, you're going to be skinny on one side and your downstrokes are generally going to be thick. So I'm making this thicker on the downstroke. What I like about these permanent pens is they work very well on the wax pastels. You can just fill that on in. And then I'm going to try to make this guy a little bit stronger too. So now that's sticking out quite nicely. I'm just going to try to make this guy a little bit thicker to match with the others. And by doing things like this, it can help you feel a little bit more confident about adding your own lettering in your pages, especially if you're not very happy with your lettering ability. I don't know if I have that perfectly straight. I guess it doesn't really matter. And it shows fall memories because I've just been enjoying the fall weather so much. It's been really quite beautiful. We've probably had the best fall colors and fall that we've probably had in years. Someone I knew mentioned said they've been in the city 7 years and they've never seen a fall like this. And I've lived in the city all my life, so I know I've had beautiful falls like this, but they don't often come this often and look this great. And so I'm going to finish this off with a little bit of paint pen. So this is a set of paint pens that when I did the paint pen comparison video, someone said, well, you didn't mention these ones. And I actually been playing around with them and they're not bad. They work fairly well. They're not as nice as the Pastels, but they're way cheaper. So I think if you're looking for a set of paint pens that seem to work consistently and are fairly inexpensive, these Artistro ones are pretty good. Sometimes I like doing this with a dip pen, but today I'm just going to stick with using a paint pen for this step. I'm just adding some highlights onto my lettering. And you just don't want to go straight across. You want to think about what's going to be in front and what's going to be in behind in some of your lettering. I'm going to start this a bit thicker here actually. And then I'm going to go down here. Because I know even when you do calligraphy, there's usually the right places or the right side to do shadows and light. In this case, I'm kind of winging it to what I kind of feel might look nice with these letters. What I like doing this too is it pulls us a bit from the background. keep adding those highlights until you finish your piece. And then I thought maybe what I would do is just add in a little bit more journaling on this. I actually think I'm going to add it in between the leaves using the gold pen. And so to finish out that piece, I put a little bit of writing here, put a little bit of writing there, put the date along the bottom. It's all in the gold, so I can read it. It is there, but I didn't want it to be too bold. We have enough black on the page. I didn't really feel like I need to add black. I hope you found this project inspiring and maybe learned something new that you can incorporate in your own creative practice. Again, drawing isn't always easy, but a little bit of practice goes a really long way. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. If you have, if you could like it, subscribe to my channel, and hit that notification button so you don't miss out on any future videos. Also, you can visit my website, hopalongstudio.com. There I include the project supply list as well as photos and written instructions for each of these projects. There I also have lots of other ideas on how to build a creative practice in your own life. I hope you have a really great week, and I will see you next time.